Fantastic, thank you.
Brilliant. So we're ready to start. So thank you all for joining, and thank you for the Growth Hub for organising this event. So today on the panel, I have myself, Raj Kondalia from Sci4. I'm a cybersecurity consultant. You've got Neil Jones, who's superintendent and director of the Cyber Resilience Centre, and we've got Paul Harland, who works for Snyk, and he is one of the technical leads there. So what I want to do is pass over to Neil to give you a quick introduction who Neil is and a bit of a background about the Cyber Resilience Centre and the work the current work he's doing. Over to you, Neil.
Thanks, Raj. So, as Raj says, I'm a serving detective superintendent with Greater Manchester Police. So I'm a very senior police officer, a senior investigating officer, and I spend some of my time, sadly, investigating murders and the horribleness that takes place. But my full-time sort of day job is to be the managing director of the Cyber Resilience Centre, which is a really innovative public and private sector partnership. It's a not-for-profit business which has been built by Greater Manchester Police and Manchester Digital, with the sole ambition of trying to protect our small business community from becoming victims of cybercrime. And we're really quite passionate around sharing as much accessible guidance and support materials as we can, so try and really make a big difference and help people start their journey of understanding what is all this thing called cyber, what is cybercrime, what does it mean, why is it relevant to me, and why should my business care really about becoming more resilient to it. So I'm sure we'll get into that as we talk through the panel discussion today, Raj.
No, definitely. Thank you, Neil. Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Raj. Yes, so I'm a solutions architect here at Snyk. That means I'm generally working along with the sales organization or our partners in order to understand customers' current states, how our solution, how our process change can help them become more secure, not in the deployed stage of the application, but in that building stage of the application. So one of the key phrases there is DevSecOps and shift left. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you, Paul. Just trying to unmute myself. So just a bit of background about myself and Sci4. So Sci4 have been operating for about 20 years now. We're digital forensic experts in not only in digital forensics, but also corporate investigations, cybersecurity, e-discovery. So what does that all mean? It means that when there is a cyber incident, we actually come in and help investigate and get you up and running. But also we do a lot of internal corporate investigations as well. Unfortunately, we live in a world where people, do stuff unlawfully internally, where we can help you investigate. And on the cybersecurity side of things, prevention is always better than the cure. As Neil mentioned, Cyber Resilience Centre, it's what is cyber, why is it important to you, which we'll touch on a bit later. But what I always say is prevention is always better than the cure. We build in foundations and break it down in 3 areas: people, process, technology. Educating the right, making sure you have the right processes and educating your staff and your company, building the right processes for your company, ensuring that we test those technologies as well for you. So that's me, that's Raj at Sci4. So what I want to talk about today is obviously in relation to the Creative Leaders Festival. We have a lot of startups, we have a lot of creative industries. So Neil, I'm going to ask you the first question as well. So if I was, I'm a startup and I'm looking to, where do I start in cybersecurity? What is the first step would you recommend for a company to look at?
Thanks, Raj. I think the starting point absolutely has to be around awareness raising and sort of training your staff to be aware of how to become sort of cyber resilient, if you like, and how it is no different than looking at your business continuity around what would you do if you had a fire or a flood, or if your business was burgled. So you think around the creative sector in particular, a lot of the people that we're talking to today are creating, new materials and things that have got a real strong value to them around what we probably recognise as intellectual property, and that might be quite familiar with that and how to protect it. And so it's where you start is with that absolute awareness raising of what are the really basic things you can do to protect you and protect your business, so that it's not, because sadly it's not a matter of if, sadly, but when you will be subject to some form of cyber attack. If you've got an online digital presence, it isn't that the criminals are trying to target you necessarily, they may be, but what they often are doing is attacking everybody at the same time, everywhere, and you might just get snared up in that attack that they are committing at that time, and you don't really want to be taken advantage of when you're just getting out of the traps and starting your own small business. And there's a lot of really, really trusted, government-backed, absolutely free guidance and support materials out there, which we at the Cyber Resilience Centre help signpost you towards. The kind of backbone of what we do is to signpost people towards the National Cyber Security Centre and their small business guide. It gives you 5 easy to follow things, and we're talking stuff like updating your computer so that it's got the latest security patches on there. We all see those annoying pop-ups, don't we, on our screens that say apply update, update software, latest OS. The reason they're so annoying and so persistent is because it's really critical that your system is then helping protect you. And we also, we'll talk about things like having an effective password, using password managers, ensuring that you've got just good digital hygiene. And really what the CRC exists to do is that really basic understanding and awareness and hand-holding and sharing it in plain language, easy to understand, so that whether you're a member of staff who is on the tools delivering stuff day to day, or whether you're the managing director, owner, founder of your business, we've got some guidance and support that, as I say, is trusted, supported by the police. And that's why GMP are involved in this, is that this is a police-led initiative, so that you get confidence that you're talking to the good guys and that we have got your best interests at heart, and we're trying to support you as ethically as we can do. And it all starts with that awareness raising. What I'll do is I'll chuck into the chat just a link through to the guidance materials that we've got, that I say are absolutely free of charge. There's no obligations, there's no upselling, it's just information that's there for anyone who's viewing today to go and avail of themselves at their own leisure. And you can dip in and out, because we're always updating and adding to it, and hopefully you'll find something in there that is helpful. And as always, if you need any further support, then just get in touch with us.
Thank you, Neil. I pasted some links in there. I'm going to paste in some information as well regarding the cyber. You already have. That's brilliant. Paul, same question to you, really. So from your background, just say if I'm a startup, I guess you've got a lot of industries creating new web applications. Where would you where's the first starting point from a development point of view?
Yeah, I hear this question quite a lot. Analogy of a plane. When do you want to make a plane safe? While it's flying, or while it's still in the blueprints? And it's obviously easier to address any vulnerabilities when you're still actually making that software. Now, some people will think, actually, I'm just writing a proof of concept. This isn't going to be my real code. I'll think about security later. But, I think anyone who's been part of a development process will understand that POCs sometimes go live, if not all of it, some parts of it. And then you have to backwardly engineer security into that. So it's always important to do it as early as possible, because you have to think of things like, okay, who are going to be my security champions? Do I need a secure software development lifecycle document? My disaster recovery policy? Do I need to start running pen tests on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis? And how do I protect my production clusters as well? So here at Snyk, we say as shift left as far as possible, and start thinking about security when you think about how to design the app. And then think about what the people and processes around that look like as well. Because you always want to be working not on best endeavors with security, but against defined policies and procedures that you have adopted business-wide.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. And add my input on the question as well. what I find is if you're a startup, 9 times out of 10, you probably have zero budget. And this is where the likes of Neil Jones and the Cyber Resilience Centre helps, because they've got a lot of content there. They've got a lot of free information there. Also, you've got companies like myself, you've got partners like myself that partner up with the Cyber Resilience Centre as well, where we do a lot of presentations that you can attend. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of those presentations are for the SME market on where to start, where do you begin. And as Paul and Neil touched on, the first part is education. You don't know what you don't know. And also one thing I do say that what cybersecurity experts do is make the invisible visible to your business, making sure that you're aware of your critical assets and what are the main threats out there to you for your organization. So for example, if your business is heavily present on an e-commerce site, then what Paul's recommended from a development point of view, that's another process for you. But if you're maybe a organization that's maybe, I don't know, in the food industry, that's probably some other controls that you need to have in place, because you've got maybe like EPOS, tills and other systems in place that you need to be aware of. And also you've also got maybe it's answering, picking up the phone. There's other, like you've got something called phishing, which is emails that you receive where cyber criminals trying to maybe from you. You've got something called phishing call. I'm sure some of you have received those HMRC phone calls saying that the payment's due. So it's also training yourself as a business and as an individual. What are these threats? How do you identify them? How do you report them? But also, how do you also train the rest of your employee and your user base to ensure that you're not a victim to cybercrime? So thank you all for that. Neil, do you have anything to add before I move on to the next question?
No, that's great. Thanks. Thanks so much.
Brilliant. What about yourself, Paul?
You button. No, fine. Just said, yeah, that those social engineering attacks are the easiest and most common, but also the easiest to train people to actually prevent. So yeah, really pay attention to those.
Brilliant. So my next question that leads up to, what if the worst case scenario does happen? What if you are a victim of a cyber attack? What should you do? So we can pass that question over to Neil first.
So what's really important is if and when you are a victim of a cyber attack is that you report it. And it's something that we find masses of unreporting, sadly, to policing and to law enforcement. And what it hampers us really is having that real intelligence picture of what's going on. And so, again, I'll put a link into the chat, but if you're subject to a cyber attack, the national reporting mechanism is via something called Action Fraud, which may not make sense because you go, well, this is a cyber attack, so why am I talking to the fraud guys? The reason is that 86% of all fraud is now cyber enabled. And often the reason why you're being attacked is to try and get some money out of your organization. Yes, there are attacks like a denial of service, which is more around business interruption, but the vast majority we see has got some kind of financial goal behind it for the criminals. So Action Fraud is hosted by the City of London Police, who are the national lead for cyber and economic crime investigation in the country. They run an organisation called the National Fraud Intelligence Bureau, and every report that's made nationally gets put into one big bucket, and then it gets analysed to look for trends and pictures. So if you've been a victim of an attack and you're a small business in Bolton, well, who's to say that a small business somewhere in Kent or in Bristol hasn't equally been a victim of the same exact attack by the same people at the same time because of that big net that I talked about earlier. So where the criminals chuck that net over everyone, you'll find that they get criminals get victims then all over the country. And what we want to do is ensure that we put all of that information together and then direct that investigation to the local police force that's got the best chance of being able to respond effectively and identify the criminals and hopefully try and get some money back if you have been taken advantage of. So reporting is key, and the second reason it's key is because again you will get signposting to the most appropriate help and support and guidance at that point of how you might be able to protect your business and how you might be able to recover. And that is really critical, because what we don't want is, if you've been a victim today, we don't want you to be a victim again next week or next month. And so this is about protecting you and your organisation from repeat victimisation. And again, what you will find then is, through Action Fraud and through police, we will signpost you to local support, and we have regional cyber centres now all over the country where you might be signposted to as well, but also to law enforcement. There is a positive responsibility on every police force that if you report as a victim of cybercrime, that we will give you what we call cybercrime prevention advice to every single victim. And so if we don't know about it, we can't provide that support. And at the moment, we estimate as low as 1 to 2% of cybercrime is being reported nationally. Despite that, the numbers are eye-watering anyway in terms of how many victims and the value of it. But please do report. I'll put a link in the chat so people can see through to how to do that.
Neil, that's phenomenal, that stat. Only 1 to 2% people report it. I just want to ask you a question regarding that. Why do you think the number's so small?
I think one is a lack of awareness that police can respond and does have an investigation capability. So until a few years ago, in all honesty, policing didn't have that capability, but now there's a really strong cyber presence across all of law enforcement nationally. But I think for businesses in particular, there's probably a reluctance because of a fear really around reputational damage, brand reputation, and maybe a little bit of a myth or a misunderstanding that because if you've been subject to a cyber attack, people might think, oh, well, do I have to report also the potential data breach to the Information Commissioner's Office? And people think, well, if I'm talking to the cops, then maybe they're going to tell the ICO. And I can give reassurance that it's not our job to tell the ICO that you've been a victim of a potential data breach. It's your responsibility as a business owner to do that within 72 hours. We might remind you of that obligation, but we're not telling them on your behalf because that's not our place to do it. We are victim focused. We want to talk to you as that business owner or member of staff or employee, whoever, and say, how can we help you? And what would help you the most at the moment? And I think maybe businesses' experience of working with the police previously has been the cops will come in, they'll seize all of our equipment, they'll keep it for a year. We won't be able to access our devices and our accounts, and actually we're not going to be able to be in business. Whereas we will literally come in and listen to you and say, this is our advice, but yes, we might be able to do some digital forensics, which I know, Raj, your company do as well. But if the victim doesn't want that, we're not going to be taking the devices off them because it's not in their interest. They've got to stay in business, and to do that, they need the kit. So we'll follow their lead, really.
No, that's brilliant, Paul. Just to rephrase the question another way for you, because I believe you work, because you work in the software place, and what Sneak do is very unique. But in terms of measures in software, so if a company's software has been a victim or there's a breach, what's your first point of call? What recommendations do you have in monitoring that breach? And if they did have a breach, how would some of the best practices, get up and running again?
Well, the first thing is you'd have a plan before it happens. If you're talking best practice, you'd have a plan of how you'd react, who's responsible, who's accountable, what actions you're going to take. The first stage is then containment. The second stage, is then removal, and then you've got to do recovery. And then, you obviously do your disclosure if you need to, that you may have had some data at risk. And then it's about improving the plan going forward. And the remediation is the step that we at Sneak can help with. So we can understand if it's been open source vulnerability, or if it's a vulnerability within your code. We can then trace that back and say, okay, perhaps it was because of this vulnerability that you've got in your code. There's obviously other tools that can look at that live system as well. So tools known as WAFs on the front end, or web application firewalls, and they can actually trace people trying to attack. They can recognize some of these bots that actually go out and try and find weaknesses in your code or your containers or your front end services. And they can recognize and stop those on the front end as well. But really, it's all about, as Neil said before, it's not if, it's when. So you need to have a plan. You need to stick to that plan, and you need to know what you're going to do to get back up after removing that threat or vulnerability after it as well.
Thank you, Paul. So just to add to that, I feel like even though we advise companies to do a pen test, well, as a pen test is great, it actually shows you vulnerabilities in your code. But what Paul and his team can do, which I find which is quite unique, is developers don't not necessarily do all secure code training and have a platform where they can maintain that secure coding. So Paul, just to throw it back at you. So a question, just saying that, would you recommend a company to actually invest time in their developers doing the secure code training, and then using some kind of a platform like Snyk to ensure that's being kept up to date?
Yeah, most definitely. It's been seen in the past that security teams are a bit of a bottleneck. They create work for other teams when they found vulnerabilities, but this work that they create is often not timely. So a developer might have written some code 2 weeks ago. It then goes through the build, ready to go live. The security team find a problem, and that developers have to stop doing what they're doing and go back to it. So this movement now, which is DevSecOps, is saying, actually, we've combined the dev and the ops team together into this multifunctional team. Let's also include security. Now, what it's not saying is, let's remove the security team. It's saying, let's augment the security team with developers who have trained, who've got a platform to help them and can understand these vulnerabilities as early as possible. It means they can develop faster. They can be sure they're secure. And then when it does go live, we've got a full audit of any vulnerabilities that we've left in there, any vulnerabilities that we've missed or removed. And it means that, there's a lot less for the pen test to catch. There's a lot left for the WAS to catch as well. So in effect, you're removing a lot of noise from then end processes as well. And they can spot some real things that you can go back and remove as well. But having developers trained in the security, it can only benefit the speed of development and the quality of development. In terms of tools, there was just one more quick question. OWASP have some great tools. They've got SCA tools, which is source code analysis. They've also got SAS tools as well and DAS tools. And these are other tools that can look at the actual code when they're running or when they're static to find vulnerabilities in that developer written code as well. In terms of Snyk, we also have a free tier, so you can go and sign up and use the free tier. We don't even ask for your credit card, and you can just go and continue to use that. That might help you as well. But lots of free tools out there. Please use as many free tools and resources as you can find. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Paul. I've also pasted a link on YouTube. We realised all the links have been put together, but there's a lot of useful information on Snyk and some of the videos they've been promoting. So just to touch on that as well, we're going to touch on something, what is a penetration test and what is a pen test, which is an ethical hack, which an organization, a certified organization, will then go and actually do what a criminal will do, is trying to penetrate and test your application or your network. And what their goal is to find any holes that a cyber criminal can exploit. So what Neil mentioned about cybercrime, protecting yourselves, there's prevention techniques you can take. You can do the training, you can do the secure code reviews and the testing and making sure that you develop the development team is a bit more agile. Also, on the back of it, you can also do the web application testing and the penetration testing that I mentioned as well. Very high level. If you want to know a bit more, you can easily, get in touch with either myself and Neil if you want to know about penetration testing. So the next thing I want to go over to in the question is, in terms of qualifications and badges, Neil, I'm an organization. Obviously, I want to make sure that my company's secure. I want to make sure that everyone knows that I'm secure and I'm taking cybersecurity a bit more seriously. Where would you recommend I should start?
Easy one. So the best thing you can do is go out and start the journey to become Cyber Essentials certified. So Cyber Essentials is again a government-backed scheme. It's kind of operated by the National Cyber Security Centre, part of the spooks in GCHQ, and it works on 2 levels. There's a basic Cyber Essentials certification, so it's a bit like doing a self-assessment of your company, and it looks at things like we talked about. So have you got a firewall? Do you apply, security updates? Do you have an IT security policy in place? And you fill out an assessment. It goes to a certified assessor. They mark it for you, and you then get a badge that says you're Cyber Essentials certified, and it says to your customers, your clients, your contacts that you take the cybersecurity of your business seriously. Think of it like getting an MOT for your car. That's the best analogy. It's really affordable. It costs generally, it's about £300 to get the certification. But then there's also a second layer to it called Cyber Essentials Plus. Now that costs a bit more because it does what you've just described, Raj, around actually somebody coming in and testing your system to make sure that the things you're saying you've got in place, you do have. So think of that a bit more like having an MOT and a full main dealer service on your car. But the car in this case is your small business. And what it says is that actually not only do you think you're secure, you can evidence that it is because it's been tested, and it gives that higher level of confidence to your customers, to your supply chain, to your potential future clients that you take this seriously. And this is why it's one of the things that the Cyber Resilience Centre actively promotes. What we do is work with a number of companies who, working with police, we will say that they are trusted partners. So because they've been assessed by the spooks in government, and we've got some confidence that these are the good guys, that they are, certification bodies that can issue the Cyber Essentials certificates. Policing is happy to align with those and say, actually, these are trusted companies who you can go to, who will support you, and they will work ethically with you to help you get that sort of badging and certification regime. Because you'll see all sorts on people's banners on the website of different things. And yes, there are other schemes out there around ISO accreditation and others, but I would always actively promote Cyber Essentials in the first instance because it's the most accessible, it's the most straightforward, and it just starts your journey.
No, that's perfect. And just to add on the Cyber Essentials, it is a minimum requirement to work with like the MOD, the Ministry of Defence, the NHS, and also local government. So you'll see that if you're going for a tender, or you're looking to, go for the supply assurance, becoming, a preferred supplier for that company or that trust, Cyber Essentials is a minimum requirement. Sometimes it might be the plus as well. So it's better to always double check that. So Paul, from a secure development point of view, what would you recommend for badges for organizations to ensure that here's my application? The first question someone's going to ask, is it secure? Is there anything that you could recommend?
So there's lots of qualifications for the actual system. So SOC 2 is one, ISO 27001 is another. Obviously, if you're doing payment cards as well, PCI. There's also a personal badge you can get, which obviously you take to different jobs. So the CISSP, Certified Information System Security Professional. And it's a case of choosing which boundaries or places you want to work. So if you want to work in America, you might need different certifications. If it's just EU, you'll need the local certifications. But generally the Cyber Essentials Plus, and then up to ISO is the usual route people go. If you go into America, you'll go to SOC 2, HIPAA, things like that, and then FedRAMP. So there's lots of different types of certification, depends on where you're working.
That's brilliant. And just to touch base on that, so working in the private sector, some companies will ask for like a CREST penetration test. So what that ensures is that you've done your due diligence and you've actually tested the application, you've got the right badge, because to become a CREST company, you have to be ISO 27001, 9001, you have to go through that vetting process. But also to get a CREST pen tester, they need to have minimum 5 years industry experience, and they have to go through some intense exams. So when you got that CREST badge or that report, ideally you'll get a pen test report to ensure that it gives that actual royal stamp on your organization. So So just to add to that, so just to summarise at the end, Neil, I appreciate it is the end now, really. So I just want to say thank you both for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking to you both. And thank you for those that are joining. If you've got any questions, please get in touch with Neil. What I'm going to quickly do is paste in some of my information there. So if you want to get in touch with Sci4 or me, some links there for you as well. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much for inviting me on there, Raj. Brilliant.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome, Paul.
See you later, Raj. See you, Neil.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, gents.